President of the European Commission. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, this debate has shown the complexity of the crisis and the complexity of the answers. And one thing I want to say, namely to those, and it's clearly a huge majority, that shares European ideals and need to have a European response, is that we should not be divided by some differences that are not the most important ones. As some of you said, there is indeed a real challenge, sometimes a threat to European integration today. And also in this debate we have seen that threat. I have heard some comments, nationalistic comments, prejudiced comments that, frankly speaking, I'm not used to listen in the European Parliament. They were a minority, but those comments were made, trying to deepen divisions between Europeans, so-called rich and so-called poor Europeans. And to those who made those comments, I'm amazed with those comments, against European solidarity, trying to deepen the cleavages between rich and poor, I ask them, where were you when Europe was financing your farmers after the war to feed your own people? Where were you when Europe was financing your infrastructures for development and competitiveness of your countries? Where were you when Europe provided the internal market for selling your services and your products? Where were you when Europe was the basis for the prosperity and the growth of your countries after the war? So only selfish, short-sighted, short-term views can sustain these kind of statements against European unity. And I think this is a serious problem. Several of you have highlighted it. So my appeal to all those who share the European ideal is that we should be united, trying to have a comprehensive response in a matter that, if you want to be serious, we have to admit, requires to build a consensus, and sometimes it is not easy. In a European Union with 27 member states, with the euro area now with 17 member states, and I very much welcome Estonia as a new member, and with a process of decision that is not always the simplest one, also because we are based on the principles of democracy, and we have not only European institutions, we have 27 democracies. So it's an extremely difficult task, the one we have in front of us. That is why I want to appeal to all those who share the European ideal, that let's not be distracted by what can be some differences of policy orientation. Mr. Stefan Hughes, I very much respect your concern with social Europe, but let's be completely open about this. What is the best way to support governments like the Greek government, the Spanish government, the Portuguese government, that are led by very distinguished members of our political family? Is it to support the reforms they are taking courageously, or to say simply that those reforms are against European values? Indeed, we need structural reforms in Europe, including in the labour sector. This is the reality. If you ask Prime Minister Papandreou, Prime Minister Zapatero, Prime Minister Socrates, this is exactly what they are doing, or they are planning even to go deeper in those reforms. So I really believe the best way to support the courageous efforts that all of us are trying to do in Europe at different paces is to have the language of truth. In the current world of competition, with the pressure of some stronger emerging economies now, either we adapt or we will be putting at risk our social market economy. We need it. We will do it, I believe, without putting in question labour's, workers' rights. And I want, once again, I'm going to respond to you in a minute. I've not forgot your question. I believe it is extremely important that we respect the principles of social dialogue. I've stated it yesterday, I reaffirm it today. But in fact, if we don't make this kind of fiscal consolidation and structural reform, we will not have confidence. And without confidence we have not growth. And without growth we will not be able to provide employment to our citizens. And to the distinguished member of this Parliament that comes from Ireland and made a question suggesting that the problems of Ireland was created by Europe, let me tell you. The problems of Ireland were created by irresponsible financial behaviour of some Irish institutions and by the lack of supervision in the Irish market. Europe is now part of the solution, is trying to support Ireland. But it was not Europe that created this fiscal irresponsible situation and this financial irresponsible behaviour. And Europe is trying to support Ireland. Because this is important to know where the responsibility lies. And this is why it is important that to those of us, and this is clearly the majority, that believe in European ideals, that we are able to have as much as possible a common response. Another point that was made by some of you was what is the level of ambition. Once again, let me put clear the position of the Commission. We are for the most ambitious position in terms of integrated response. That's why the Commission will be ready to support some of the measures that some of you have proposed. But we are living in a situation when we believe in times of crisis like this, in times of the instability of the markets, that it is critically important that we give a contribution to a consensus regarding Member States. And there were some divisions, in fact, on the way to address this crisis. Revision of the treaty. You know what was the position of the Commission? We said from the beginning that we thought it was possible to make a permanent mechanism without a revision of the treaty. But at least one Member State of the European Union, and we need unanimity for those matters, stated clearly that it was needed a revision of the treaty. And since we believe it's important to have a permanent stability mechanism, the Commission played a constructive role, supporting, in fact, this limited revision of the treaty. So I think it will be a complete mistake now to be divided on this matter. Since we want to reinforce stability, I think it is important that we agree on this limited revision of the treaty. Some of us would like to go further. I personally would like to go further in terms of the structuration and the deepening of the community approach. But we have to be responsible in this very specific moment we are living and to try to have the most ambitious common, the highest common denominator and not the lowest common denominator. And that is why I want to state again that some of the proposals that are put forward are in themselves interesting ones, but they are not able at this moment to generate the necessary consensus. And the Commission has to be very attentive to the contribution it gives to forging this consensus. Finally, I think everybody has to give a contribution. I don't like those divisions about rich or poor, or new and old, or centre and periphery. In Europe, all the states have exactly the same dignity. And those ideas of discriminating between Member States are, in fact, very dangerous ideas for the European project. And so how should we do? We should ask all Member States that are in a more vulnerable position to do whatever they have to do to restore confidence in their economies through appropriate macroeconomic stability, fiscal consolidation, structural reforms. This is critically important at this moment. We are not helping them if we are suggesting that they can escape that route. This is not helping them. At the same time, those countries who are now in a better position, they should show solidarity to those countries as well. I think it is critically important that we have a strong response regarding the stability of the euro area, that we are not, as it happened sometimes in the past, to be honest, not behind the curve, but ahead of the curve, that we give a comprehensive response that restores confidence in the determination of the euro area and the European Union as a whole. Not just by statements, by acting. That's what the important thing. That's the question of credibility. Not just making important statements are important, but it is not enough. It is important to act. And as a whole, all of us, to commit to stronger governance in the euro area and in the European Union. This is indeed something that markets are asking us. There is a problem of perception. It's how can we take decisions and how can we implement the decisions? So we need a stronger governance in the euro area. We need a stronger economic policy coordination in the European Union as a whole. And basically, we should all of us commit to the principles of solidarity and responsibility. It's not just a question of responsibility, it's a question of solidarity. It's not just a question of solidarity, it's a question also of responsibility. Only then we can achieve stability, and stability is the basis for our future prosperity. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President Herman Van Rompuy, the floor is yours.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, je commencerai d'abord par quelques éléments positifs. Je m'en excuse que je suis à certains moments positif. D'abord,